Welcome to DABCC Radio,
where smart people listen.
Virtualization and Cloud Talk,
featuring cutting-edge solutions from the hottest companies around the globe.
Broadcasting from the DABCC offices in sunny Sarasota, Florida.
Surrounded by computers, books, and Legos.
A Microsoft MVP, Citrix Charter CTP, VMware vExpert.
And your host, Douglas Brown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC Radio. We have a great show for you today. We really honestly do. We have, you know what? We have an integrator on the show, and I love bringing integrators on the show because I have a whole different perspective than, a typical vendor. So today we have a company called Coretek Services on, and Coretek is an integrator based out of Michigan area, but they cover a wide path of land, and we have Brian Barnes, one of their main guys, and Brian's an engineer by training, really smart guy, and I really enjoyed recording this podcast and just throwing questions at him. So whenever we do these podcasts, we always come up with a basic list of questions to sort of make sure that we get, we talk about what we want to talk about, because guys like me go everywhere. So in this podcast, we talked about what we wanted to talk about, and then even more time spent on just me asking Brian questions because he's a really smart guy. So I think you'll like this podcast. And with no further ado, I'll shut up and we'll get straight to it. So here's my interview with Brian Barnes from Coretek Services. Okay, Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. So I really look forward to I look forward to doing this with you guys. So it's always fun to have, integrators on versus just ISVs. So it's a whole different perspective, how you guys see the industry than, what we usually used to. So I really love having guys like you on. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to do this with me.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. My pleasure.
Okie dokie. So that being said, as always, my first question is, who are you? So who are you and what do you do over at Coretek?
Yeah, great. Thanks. This is Brian Barnes. I'm the Director of Solutions Architecture at a company called Coretek Services based out of Farmington Hills. And myself, been in technology now for a good 25 years, and both on the consulting angle early on and in-house inside of large financial industries and services, and really managed large teams there, but kind of fell back to my love of consulting inside the Microsoft, Citrix, and VMware space, and been doing that for about 7-8 years for Coretek. And I really do love technology and really drive deep and understand the landscape so we can bring new solutions to our customers. And for myself, not only do I love technology and kind of geek out, but definitely love to spend my time longboarding and enjoying the Michigan summers and fall. Obviously, we're ramping up into post-fall in the winter, which if you're not a skier, it's kind of harsh. But for myself, I definitely love longboarding and getting outdoors.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Michigan's just beautiful country. It's just really, really beautiful country up there. So you come from the engineering side then, don't you? That's great.
I do. I do.
That is wonderful. That's wonderful. So I always say I'm an engineer by training. I ended up a podcaster by happenstance, I guess. I don't know how it happened, but I quite enjoy it. So I get to talk with smart guys like you. So what more can I ask for? So can you tell us a bit about Coretek? What are you guys trying to solve? What do you bring to the table that's different than everyone else too?
Yeah, no, great question. So from a Coretek perspective, we started back in 2005, founded by two Siemens folks that actually were kind of focused into healthcare. And they had an early understanding of EMR adoption when healthcare was flipping over from paper to EMRs and EHRs, electronic medical records. And then when those projects were kicking off, there was very large dissatisfaction against a large population of both clinicians and physicians about the time it took to get their documentation done electronically versus paper. So obviously from a computer background and an industry that those two understood, there was really good segues into virtual desktop adoption. And I think back in 2005, VDI at its core was somewhat new to the field. A lot of organizations were just jumping into the virtualization space inside the data center at that time. And then understanding how we can leverage that technology towards EMR adoption and creating clinical workflows inside of healthcare.
That's great. That's great. So you guys been doing VDI. What do you see your customers saying about VDI today? Where do you see the adoption with that going, things like that, especially in the healthcare space?
Yeah, early on, it was all about trying to understand how to make VDI successful. And a lot of our customers have tried and failed multiple times over a 3 and 5 year period of trying to get that technology off the ground, right? And a lot of it is most of your listeners know is around creating the right storage tiers and performance tiers to give the user experience kind of what they wanted and what they needed to do their day-to-day. But understanding that the expense of that solution somewhat mitigated the success of a lot of those early projects. And where kind of Coretek stepped in is we had the ability to understand when to leverage VDI from a client OS virtualization perspective and when to leverage lower cost type of solutions like RDS or XenApp to give the understanding of how these workflows can be successful at a lower cost. And I think that's where Coretek really kind of pressed into our early success in 2005 and 2006, that you can provide a virtual desktop in many ways, but really the trick is trying to leverage which technology makes sense for the right use case.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. So you sort of set me up there. You said, you understand when. So I've always said in most cases XenApp is the best solution. Come on, I'm a Zen, WinFrame baby. So what do you expect from a guy like me, right? But so when do you leverage VDI versus something like a XenApp RDS, server-based computing?
Yeah, so honestly, it's an understanding of the application space and understanding what applications each use case uses to create a clinical workflow. And then those applications will dictate the performance needs of the not only the use case, but the overall general population of the users coming in. So typically, when it's just EMR access and documentation, as well as charting and rounding, those are typical applications that fit well in the XenApp space. And so we can publish those applications systematically, or we can leverage a presented desktop and bake a kind of a cohesive workspace that roams for those users. And when the applications require a heavier footprint, we definitely lean towards VDI in a client OS like a Win7 or, back in the day, an XP, now Win10. But we leverage those when the application need arises. So think of like dictation using Dragon Dictation or M-Modal. Those two applications require a little bit more processor, a little bit more memory reservation. So leveraging those specific use cases towards VDI makes perfect sense.
Oh, makes a lot of sense. So, I wear two hats. It's sort of interesting to be me nowadays. I'm DABCC Doug and IGEL Doug, but at the end of the day, I'm just Doug. And so that being said, I want to ask you some questions about IGEL too, because you guys have been really embracing the IGEL solution at Coretek for quite some time now. And can you talk a bit about, your experience with IGEL and why you've been embracing, where you see it fits into what you just talked about?
Yeah, sure. So we've been a IGEL partner now for, about 4 years. And we were looking at different technologies in the landscape that allowed us to do many things. Obviously, this shift from a Windows endpoint or even a Windows embedded endpoint towards easily manageable devices using Zero Clients or Thin OS or different OSs that were out there across the landscape. But I think what appealed to us from IGEL is their early understanding that these things have to be managed cohesively as well as easily across different hardware types. And because you guys supported IGEL early on, along with Dell, Wise, and HP for some of their Prove ID embedded workflows, that Imprivata support and their easy management is kind of what drew us as a partner to you guys. And since, I would say about 4 years ago or so, you guys are definitely our lead-in solution around those 2 points, especially inside of healthcare, creating single sign-on and authentication management workflows. That blends itself really easily into to the IGEL stack entirely.
You got it. You got it. So we've talked a bit about healthcare and how this works within the healthcare. Are there any other industries or verticals that you see that you guys work with that you see fit within SBC and VDI, and of course, something like what IGEL brings to the table too?
Yeah, so definitely in the manufacturing space, we see a lot of interest around obviously solid state devices not sucking in dirty air. So think of those shop floor applications or harsh climate where they might be in tents and out in the sand for those type of defense, as well as manufacturing where they're on shop floors and in those harsher environments. And obviously, without spinning fans there, the hardware aspect of that makes perfect sense. But where we've seen a lot of benefit is extending the life of XP-based hardware, right? So machines that are sitting out there for now 7, 8, 9 years, where really we just need a conduit to a virtual desktop, but be able to manage those devices in a cohesive way with like a universal desktop converter, and changing that Windows OS into a hardened thin client type.
What do the customers have to say about that? Do they? Does it matter to them? One of the things about when you think about traditional thin clients, and I hate the word thin client, I really do, because it has a negative connotation to it if you have any age to you, right? And,
right.
So what are they seeing with the difference, or what are you, someone with some experience, seeing the experience from the user then versus now, or what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, from the end user perspective, it's not so much of an experience as it is creating an administrative experience to manage the different device types. I think from our perspective, when you have things like mergers and acquisitions and companies buying other companies, you're managing more and more of a diverse landscape of device types, right? So you might have 15-year-old Windows C devices from Dell Wise or the early Wise days, and how we leverage new Lenovo devices that some companies might have bought more recently. It becomes less of a concern administratively if you can manage all those different hardware platforms with a single pane of glass. And I think that's where we've leveraged the ease of use from an IGEL perspective to really gain a lot of quick traction and to jump into a VDI kind of mindset or a virtual mindset when it comes to the user.
Perfect. And where do you see something like an IGEL, assisting with the goals of the project?
Yeah, no, that's great. So obviously, merging PC refresh cycles is a big way to fund a lot of virtual initiatives. So typically when we walk into a customer, and usually large customers, 20, 30,000 seats or higher, we kind of look for those budgetary kind of markers that say, we've got budget or funds allocated for specific projects that target the endpoint. And we leverage those to insert lower cost devices or lower cost projects and match that into capital funding for on-prem data center investment, so that we can kind of position an easier use environment as well as a more secure environment, which is kind of top of mind for everyone.
Got it. You got it. Can you maybe give us some examples of some projects you guys have had success with?
Yeah, obviously, kind of being healthcare focused, we've deployed customers as large as 250,000 users, 200,000 users with a large number of clinical endpoint focus. And I think from that perspective, those projects can run anywhere between 2 to 5 years of an implementation cycle. And where our kind of expertise meets is on the solution architecture side, matching the right solution to the right type of virtualization strategy, but having the right service organization and PMO structure underneath us to make those projects successful. We have a lot of different large healthcare customers, but one that comes top of mind is one that we've leveraged both a national, multiple healthcare organization deploying a VDI strategy across 28 different health systems. Another one where we kind of targeted, more individually on somewhat of a newer kind of workflow is how do we get rid of the mice, right? If we have an EMR that's touch friendly, do we need the mouse anymore? And so leveraging IGEL hardware devices as well as UDC devices and merging them with touch screens with USB 3 redirection has actually worked really great for our customers.
So let's talk a bit about more specific about Coretek, and I won't say outside of IGEL, but maybe you can give some examples outside of IGEL too, not specific to IGEL, right? Can you talk a bit about what separates you guys from everyone else in the industry? If I was looking for someone like an integrator, why would I want to go with Coretek versus everybody else?
Yeah, I think one of the things that excites me most about this company, I've been with it going on 8 years now, and as someone in IT understands, that's a long life cycle inside of a specific company, right? And what excites me most about Coretek is that we're always thinking ahead. One of the things that I'm really excited to talk to customers about when it comes to capital investment on hardware and managing the data center. So about 3 years ago, Coretek started looking at the cloud and trying to understand that space to figure out where kind of that next footprint or data center footprint needs to be leveraged to bring more efficiency and cost efficiency to the customers. And leveraging what AWS has been doing with their IaaS as well as Azure, we've really picked Azure to be kind of that next forefront into virtual desktop adoption. And so from a Coretek perspective, we've kind of put all of our eggs in that basket, really ramped up our Microsoft partnership, and then worked very aggressively with Citrix to create unique infrastructures that are both managed as a ASP, think of, or a CSP partner, and bringing cloud desktop realization to our customers.
Very cool. So, let's go down that path for a bit, if you don't mind. So you guys picked Azure over AWS, which is definitely interesting. Can you give us some whys in, why? What do you see the value in Azure that AWS doesn't bring? And of course, what does that bring to the customer?
Yeah, so obviously Citrix has had a great partnership with Microsoft, a long-standing partnership. Anybody from Citrix or has worked with Citrix for a long period of time knows that partnership tends to get tighter and tighter over time. And we saw our Citrix Platinum partnership kind of merging very well to some strategies that our Microsoft partnership was aligning to. And knowing that Microsoft has a good footprint into most organizations, that we knew that at one time that it was going to be incentivized to move to Azure and creating, the cost structure that made sense for their customers. And with the recent release, earlier part of this year, with Win 10 capability up into public cloud with a licensing rearrangement, we kind of saw that as a catalyst, to continue to, stand on that mantra of Citrix Microsoft. And so that was one of the core reasons why we chose them. But the more important one is that Microsoft creates a very partner-friendly ecosystem to build solutions upon, right? So we can definitely sell AWS and build workload to there, but Amazon hasn't really looked for consumption-based partners and building a partner ecosystem like Microsoft there. So we kind of doubled down on our Microsoft side and said, we want to be the biggest Microsoft cloud solution provider that's out there. And through that, starting up their CSP program, we've leveraged that to bring a lot of full production customers running both Windows 10 and Windows 2012 R2 workload running XenApp into a lot of our type of clinical and non-clinical workflows.
Makes sense. So SBC, XenApp, VDI is definitely going to the cloud. It seems like it's sort of dipped its big toe in there, right? Some of the management is there right now and things like that. But do you see the future where those workloads are running from the cloud 100%? Where do you see this going? What's your mindset on, how we start, how we end up in the cloud, I guess, maybe is the way to describe it. You know what I'm trying to say?
I do, yeah. So, a lot of organizations are trying to understand, what the cloud means to them. And a lot of them really don't know where to start. And this kind of goes above and beyond just what we do from a healthcare perspective. We branch out, into all verticals and all sectors, both defense, manufacturing, tier 1, tier 2 automotive, being in Michigan. So we have a lot of different customer types. And one thing that we notice is that they don't know how to get started. And so we've kind of developed what we call Cloud Foundations, and it's a architectural and enterprise solutions approach on how we would want to architect a cloud-based solutions matching to your goals, whether it's chargeback or BU-type billing. And we've really pressed into how we leverage those cloud desktop or SBC desktop in the cloud projects and then build some consumption and understanding of cost around that. And so we've spent a lot of development time into our CSP practice, building up what's called AMS, or Azure Management Suite. And this is a way for customers to get very quick visibility and detailed billing of all of their consumption services around Zen App, Zen Desktop, or other application workloads that we create custom tagging through.
Makes sense. So some say the cloud is actually quite expensive. Do you see that? Do you see that it can bring the value? And if so, where's it save? Where are you saving the money in order to pay for the, the extra services? And, you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, one of the great things to be able to talk to customers about is, if with an unmanaged cloud, there is usually a higher cost expense than building out an on-prem infrastructure. And so what we try to do is really build out a strategy and then leverage things like automation and quick ability to provision new workload, as well as power on and power off life cycles that we can automate to based upon business need or customer need. So when we think about, standing up a VM and an IaaS workspace in Azure, or we stand up an application with multiple different IaaS types, there's specific parts of that environment we can bring down and deallocate to save on that cost, as well as spin up and allocate based upon how we want to consume those resources. So I think one of the things that we're seeing big advantages is giving customers an experience that they understand where the cost comes from and how to automate to the point we can alleviate a lot of those costs in their day-to-day life cycle of their organization.
Very cool, very cool. So you also mentioned you guys like to look at what's next. That's a wide open question. So, the world is definitely changing. We have big data everywhere, but even companies like Citrix is talking about artificial intelligence, which I find quite interesting. And that's going to impact everything and everybody. IoT, Citrix got into OctaBlue, and of course it's about connecting the unconnected, which is everything, right? So where do you see the world coming, or going, and what do you think it's going to take to get to utopia,
I do, and obviously there's a lot of different facets to that conversation. There's a lot of different business segments that can spin down their own way on how they leverage AI or different technologies in the IoT space. One thing that we're really working with our partners with is to create meaningful workflows we can do today, and then bring those solutions to our partners to enhance their solutions in the future, right? So one example is we leverage a lot of different workflows based upon a product called Imprivata, OneSign, and they have a secondary product called Confirm ID that leverages the ability to do strong authentication. Think of like a fingerprint, a retinal scan, a facial recognition inside of their workflows to, let's say, med dispense, right? So a clinician walks up to their typical med dispensary. They have to authenticate before some of those medications are available to them. It also creates a documentation ability to say who grabbed what medicine for what patient. And when we're trying to merge technologies into that medical IoT space, we have to create some authentication around that. So we leverage Imprivata OneSign as well as Confirm ID to give some of those workflow examples and authentication requirements based upon security need.
Great. So you mentioned security. So, not a day goes by that I don't read something or hear something about some security breach or security issue, and it's definitely forefront of everybody's mind as we connect everything to everything, right? So, how do you feel about the current state of IT security? What are we lacking? Where are we going?
Yeah, and honestly, it's what keeps me up at night as well, right? So when we're talking about any type of data, whether you're in manufacturing or healthcare, HIPAA requirements as well as PCI, those type of things we want to make sure that we're always talking to and architecting to around security. And when we're trying to merge in cloud strategies, that's where we have to pay special attention to how we leverage different data access conduits or what type of technologies we're putting to control some of that in place. And the nice thing, obviously from IGEL is we alleviate and mitigate a large attack surface just by moving away from Windows at the edge and bringing that into the data center. So there are some inherent security gains that we get by bringing that data centrally inside the data center. But we're also able to control things we do through that endpoint too, right? So controlling USB devices through Citrix-based policy, or even using products like Avanti, like AppSense or Res to be able to leverage how we use that product. And, honestly, I think from a security standpoint, we'll never be 100% safe, but the solutions that we work towards and put forth for our customers are definitely more secure, more easily manageable, and better understood than when we left.
You got it. You're never 100% safe. I've always said if there's a door and you can walk in or walk out, that means someone else can walk in. And if you don't like it, do you remember, you've been around a while, do you remember the old NT351 security checker? Remember that app?
I do, absolutely.
You would run that app and it would always come back red, right? And it said, and what was the one thing? It said something like disconnect the network cable. Like, well, I can't do that.
Yeah, that would create a problem.
That would create a problem. Then you'd then I would make the mistake of showing that to my customer. My customer being there when I was running, and he's like, "Well, what can we do? I need to tell my boss it's secure." So you can't tell your boss it's secure, buddy. That's the nature of the beast. It's a cat and mouse game, right? Try to make it so difficult that they go somewhere else to go hack.
Right.
So, interesting. So, what about Citrix? I'm right now. I'm at the point, Brian, where I'm just throwing questions at you to see. You're a smart guy. This is fun. So, what do you see about the current state of Citrix style technologies? Where are we going with that? If you had one wish for remoting style technology, be it VDI, SBC, what would that be?
Well, that's a great question. So from a Citrix point of view, we do both Citrix and VMware, and a lot of customers are, you kind of, set their flag in the camp that they want to go down. And I think leveraging mobility strategies against a virtualization strategy, as well as understanding how our users are going to want to connect today and tomorrow, right? So the user experience is usually what drives success in a project. And I think a lot of the applications, as well as the social aspect of how users are consuming data, is kind of being missed in the enterprise solution. The way millennials come in and access data as well as consume data is much different than IT guys like you and I. And I think Citrix around its presentation of business applications is great. But I think the merging of how we see the landscape being developed day to day by social media applications is something that's being missed out there that we can definitely tie into. Having an understanding of what our users are consuming and the way that they're consuming it and getting access to data, I think is something that we miss inside of a lot of the architectures that we stand up.
Interesting. You mentioned millennials, and as I joked with you prior to the podcast, I like to sort of pick on millennials. It's easy prey, I guess, right? And but they see really, to be honest, these guys are very interesting because they see the world so much differently than I do, right? When you and I came into IT, we controlled everything. We were the god, right?
Right.
No, you cannot have this. I will give you this. And if you didn't like the guy, you'd never give him anything you wanted, right? Or you made him wait. Nowadays, it's not the way. That's not the case. Where do you see what do you see the differences between, besides what I just laid out, I guess, the millennial and traditional IT, and where do you see the good and bad in that? Where do you see that changing?
Yeah, it's a great question and something that I always struggle with, right? Because I've been around long enough to see the pendulum swing from one side to the other, whereas you want to bring everybody in-house, work from the same workspace to create a culture, and then you want to swing it the other way and say, no, we need to give everybody the freedom to work when they want, how they want, as long as they meet their expectations, we're good. Well, I honestly think there's definitely a come to the middle point to that. And so as we kind of build in infrastructures and workspaces, I think there's probably a blending of those two type of work atmospheres. And especially when it comes to millennials, I think, they want to be able to, go to their IT shop of choice, whether it's a Windows store, an Apple store, buy the device they want, get access to all the media and data that they need, and do the job that they're supposed to do at their own time frame, right? And obviously, as business expectations continue to be impounding upon, there's definitely a way that we need to come together. And I think bridging the gap between work-life balance and work styles is really the challenge of the IT administrator today, because not only, you have the day-old problem of trying to understand and manage all the different devices that are coming into your environment, but how do we give the type of work atmosphere that we want, and building cool new facilities to work in, I think, is paramount, right? You need to build a culture, but at the same time, kind of leverage the ability for users to really want to work on the devices and work the way that they want to work.
You got it. Okay, let's get back to IGEL a bit. What do you guys doing a lot of healthcare? This UD Pocket thing, the USB stick is really going gangbusters. Are you guys selling that stuff? Have you seen any interest in it? What do you personally think of it? If you've sold any, what do the customers think of it? Things like that.
Yeah, I love the idea of the UD Pocket. I think it has some really great applications in its specific use case. I think there are some complexities that we as partners still need to work out, bringing some of the customer concerns. There are customers out there that just don't want any type of USB hanging out there that a customer could take. And even though that we, as well as you, know that if they take it, it's really of little value other than of a business need, there are some concerns around that. And I think really what excites me the most is, with the UDC2 model where you bought a license that you put on the device and it died with that device. I'm really excited to see the UDC3 is when you can buy that license and move it to different device types and really kind of cohesively manage your environment based upon the quantity of licenses that you buy, and knowing how you might swing to using IGEL in one area and then ramp up and ramp down in others, with mergers and acquisitions always being a big part of healthcare as well as other industries. I think that's really important on the UDC type.
Yeah, I really like that. One of the things I love about IGEL is it's about the operating system, right? It's about the IGEL OS, and the form factor is what fits that person. In some cases, UD Pocket is great. In other cases, they're very wary of the USB, like you mentioned, right? Or maybe they don't need that, the physical device, that physical piece, right? They could just use something like the UDC. But at the end of the day, it's all the same operating system. It doesn't matter. Now, if we get the licensing, to roam with them and things like that, that would be a beautiful thing. That would be a beautiful story right there. I totally agree, Brian. So, I'm about out of questions. I think I can ask you more and more and more, but is there anything you'd like to talk about? Anything I've left out?
Yeah, I think one of the things that, definitely, I kind of got two things. One, from a IGEL perspective, I think really what sets you guys apart is definitely your UMS infrastructure, right? How you build and manage those devices. It's great, from a hardware standpoint as well as an OS standpoint, but the ease and efficiency to make changes within a UMS infrastructure with large-scale deployments is really how we have made our customers efficient in building up, kind of a management life cycle of their organization, right? So when we implement something, we might be running into, Citrix 7.13 with, certain versions of UMS and certain versions of UDC. Being able to make those changes through a single UMS console as well as managing it holistically from a single pane of glass is really what we've loved about that solution. From a non-IGEL perspective, I think where we love to see the blending of success is really understanding those Microsoft programs that customers can leverage. Coretek is a part of an elite program, a partner program called GoFast. And we're able to leverage Microsoft funding for a lot of their VDI initiatives as well as other technology initiatives on Microsoft's dime. So being able to talk to Microsoft customers on how they might own specific technology and leverage that for Azure-based projects is something that we love to talk about. And we're about one of 40 cloud managed services providers in the world and like one of 13, I believe, in the country that's able to do some of these programs, right? So we're really excited to, kind of educate what you can do in Azure today, and especially around the VDI projects that they have, creating secondary and tertiary data centers to bring Citrix-based workload out of.
You got it. That's very cool, and I'm glad you brought up the UMS because that's really that's the brains behind the operating system, right? The OS is fabulous and what have you, but a standalone OS is Windows. And as much as I love Windows, the distributed computing is not that great when it comes to guys like you and I, right, or IT. We need to be able to manage that in an easy, efficient, way at any place, any time. And that's what's so beautiful about the IGEL solution too, is that you can manage anything. And it's just so powerful, and it's all in real time, and Oh, the more I tell you, Brian, the more I dive into the IGEL solution, every time I see a demo from one of our engineers, one of our SEs, I learn something. And I think, okay, I figured it out. And then I see another demo and it's, oh my God, we can do that too? It's like, how did I miss this? That's because there's so many different things it's almost tough to learn it all. But yet it's
right.
not over engineered. It's easy to use, which is quite impressive too, right?
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Okie dokie, my friend. I think we're done. If there's anything else you'd like to chat about, please let me know. My last question usually is, if somebody wants to learn more about about Coretek, what do they need to do?
Yeah, definitely visit our website at coretekservices.com. That's Coretek services.com. From there, you can jump into all of the things that we do, and we do great. From a Coretek perspective, we're really eager to talk to all different business segments, both in healthcare and outside of healthcare, around manufacturing and automotive, as well as defense. We're doing a lot of stuff inside of defense and private contracting now. So really kind of love to talk to new customers. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit that website or email myself, brian.barnes, BARNES, at coretekservices.com.
Perfect. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time and doing this with me and sharing your views on the industry as a whole. And of course, a bit about IGEL too. That's always appreciated. So I truly enjoyed it. And I'll go ahead and give you the last word and say thank you.
Thanks, Doug. I really appreciate the time and really excited to talk to new IGEL customers, and really just appreciate the time talking to you today. It's been great.
Okay, that concludes another successful episode of DABCC Radio. As always, I want to thank my guest for today, Brian Barnes from Coretek Services. And Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Truly appreciate it. Guys listening, the way we record these, like I said in the intros, we sort of put together a basic list of questions, and then I ask them a bunch of other questions that wasn't at all related to it. And Brian was a lot of fun to do that with. Very smart guy. So, Brian, thanks so much for being put under the gun of Doug's, rapid questions. So I really enjoyed it. Learned a lot from you. And if you guys are listening, want to learn more about Coretek, definitely head over to their website. And also, thanks, Brian, for talking a bit about IGEL, too. So Coretek's a big IGEL partner for us, for IGEL, and really doing some great work there. And they understand the business and then some, which is really great for, guys like me to see. And, of course, for IGEL, but mostly for the customers out there, because they sell a solution. They don't sell a problem or they don't have they sell a solution. They look at the customer, they figure out what the best thing to do is, and then they do it. So one of the best out there. Brian, thank you again for taking the time to be with us. And, of course, thanks to each and every one of you guys for listening to DABCC Radio. Without you, there would be no DABCC Radio. It'd just be two guys talking to themselves, which is okay, but it's not as much fun as sharing that conversation with you. So I hope you like it. If you do, definitely tell a friend. That's how we grow. We don't do advertising. We grow via word of mouth. So please tell a friend, shoot them the link, just tell them to head over to dabcc.com/DABCC Radio and, or tweet it, Facebook it, Smoke Signals. I'm still waiting for someone to do the smoke signals, please. Somebody, smoke signal. And what else do I say? But thank you. We also have mobile apps, so head over to your favorite app store, be it that Google, Android, or iPhone, and download. Just search DABCC, and you'll find both applications for news, all of our resources, and also the podcast too. So you can listen to the podcast directly from a DABCC podcast player on your device of choice, I guess. So on that note, I want to thank thank you. I want to call this an episode, and I want to again thank each and every one of you guys for listening to DABCC Radio.
Can you say DABCC?
DABC.
Say it again, DABCC.
DABC.
Can you say it again, DABCC?
DABC.
How about DABCC?
DABC.
DABCC.
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 DABCC.